The ancient stones of Windsor Castle had witnessed centuries of diplomatic meetings, royal ceremonies, and historic moments that shaped the world. But, on this crisp autumn morning, as the morning mist lifted from the Thames Valley, something extraordinary was about to unfold within these legendary walls. Two worlds were about to collide in the most spectacular way: the refined elegance of British royalty and the bold charisma of American political power. What happened behind those castle doors would not only redefine international diplomacy but also reveal the true character of those involved, creating ripples that would be felt across both sides of the Atlantic. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the perfectly manicured gardens of Windsor Castle as Princess Catherine stepped onto the ancient cobblestones of the upper ward. Her breath formed small clouds in the cool air as she surveyed the preparations that had been underway since dawn. Today was no ordinary day at the royal residence. The careful choreography of protocol and tradition was about to welcome one of the most controversial and charismatic figures in modern American politics. Catherine adjusted her elegant navy coat, a piece she had chosen specifically for its diplomatic significance. The color represented both British naval tradition and American formal wear, a subtle nod to the transatlantic relationship that would be celebrated today. Her stylist had spent weeks planning every detail, from the pearl earrings that once belonged to the late Queen Elizabeth to the carefully selected handbag that would photograph beautifully against the castle's limestone walls. Prince William emerged from the private apartments, his military bearing evident in every step. He had spent the early hours of the morning in briefings with Foreign Office officials, reviewing the delicate balance of protocol that would govern today's events. As the heir to the throne, William understood the weight of every gesture, every word, and every photograph that would emerge from this historic meeting. The couple walked together through the corridors that had housed kings and queens for nearly 1,000 years. Their footsteps echoed off the ancient stones, joining the whispers of history that seemed to emanate from every corner of the castle. William paused at a window overlooking the Long Walk, the famous tree-lined avenue that stretched for miles into the distance. Soon, that avenue would witness the arrival of the presidential motorcade. In the state apartments, staff members made final adjustments to floral arrangements that had been designed to reflect both British and American symbolism. White roses from the castle's own gardens mingled with seasonal flowers in arrangements that would serve as backdrops for the inevitable photographs. Every detail had been considered, from the positioning of chairs to the selection of refreshments that would be served during the private meetings. Catherine reviewed her notes one final time, though she had memorized every important detail days ago. She understood that her role today extended far beyond mere hostess duties. As a future queen, she represented the continuity of the monarchy and the British people's relationship with their most important ally. Her warm smile and genuine interest in her guests would be scrutinized by millions around the world. The security preparations had been extraordinary, even by royal standards. The quiet efficiency of the protection teams was evident everywhere, though carefully concealed behind the pageantry and tradition. Snipers took positions on the castle's towers, their presence known but not visible to the gathering crowds of media and spectators who had assembled outside the castle gates. William received a final briefing from his private secretary about the schedule for the day. The morning would begin with a private meeting in the Oak Room, followed by a tour of the castle's most significant staterooms. Lunch would be served in the Waterloo Chamber, surrounded by portraits of the great figures who had shaped European history. The afternoon would include a visit to St. George's Chapel, where Harry and Meghan had married just months earlier. The prince understood that today's events carried significance that extended far beyond diplomatic courtesy. The relationship between Britain and America had weathered many storms over the centuries, from colonial rebellion to world wars to modern political disagreements. Today's meeting represented an opportunity to strengthen those bonds through personal connection and mutual respect. Catherine made her way to the private chapel for a few moments of quiet reflection. The stained glass windows cast colorful patterns across the stone floor as she considered the responsibility that rested on her shoulders. She had learned much about statecraft from watching the late Queen Elizabeth navigate decades of political changes and international crises. Today would be her opportunity to apply those lessons. The sound of helicopters in the distance signaled that the moment was approaching. The presidential advance team had been working for weeks to coordinate every aspect of the arrival, from the precise timing of the motorcade to the positioning of cameras that would capture the historic handshake on the castle steps. The choreography had been rehearsed until every movement was perfect. William straightened his tie and checked his appearance one final time. He thought about his grandmother, who had hosted every American president since Harry Truman. Each meeting had its own character and challenges, but all had contributed to the special relationship between the two nations. Today, he would add his own chapter to that remarkable history. The couple made their way to the grand entrance, where they would greet their distinguished guest. The red carpet had been unrolled, and the household cavalry had taken their positions in full ceremonial dress. The pageantry of the British monarchy was on full display, a reminder of the continuity and stability that the institution represented. Catherine felt a familiar flutter of anticipation as she prepared to meet someone who had dominated headlines around the world. She had studied briefing materials about American politics and culture, understanding that her genuine interest and knowledge would be appreciated by their guest. Her natural warmth and curiosity had always been assets in diplomatic situations. The sound of the motorcade grew louder as it approached through Windsor Great Park. The perfectly maintained roads had been cleared of all traffic except for the essential vehicles in the presidential convoy. Local residents lined the route, many waving small British and American flags that had been distributed by organizers. William took Catherine's hand briefly, a gesture of solidarity and partnership that spoke volumes about their approach to royal duties. They had learned to work as a team, supporting each other through the demands of public life while maintaining their individual personalities and strengths. Today would showcase that partnership on the world stage. The first vehicles of the motorcade appeared at the castle gates, their dark shapes creating a modern contrast to the medieval architecture. The careful coordination between British and American security services was evident in every movement, though the underlying tension of protection was masked by the celebration of the occasion. Inside the lead vehicle, final preparations were being made for what would surely be one of the most memorable encounters in recent diplomatic history. The meeting of Old World elegance and New World energy was about to begin, with all the excitement and uncertainty that such encounters inevitably bring. As the motorcade rolled through the gates of Windsor Castle, Catherine and William took their positions at the grand entrance. The ancient walls seemed to lean in, eager to witness another chapter in the long story of Anglo-American relations. The stage was set for an encounter that would be remembered for generations to come. The presidential limousine, known as the Beast, rolled to a stop precisely at the red carpet's edge. The massive vehicle, with its reinforced armor and sophisticated communication systems, looked almost alien against the backdrop of medieval stone and Gothic architecture. For a moment, time seemed suspended as two worlds prepared to meet. Catherine smoothed her coat one final time and exchanged a quick glance with William. Their silent communication, developed over years of partnership, conveyed confidence and readiness. The crowd of dignitaries, staff, and carefully selected observers held their collective breath as the limousine door began to open. The first person to emerge was a member of the Secret Service advance team, his professional demeanor barely concealing the tension of protecting the most powerful person in the world in a foreign country. His eyes swept the scene once more, confirming what had already been checked dozens of times. Only then did he signal that it was safe for the president to exit. Donald Trump stepped onto the red carpet with the confident stride that had become his trademark. His navy suit was impeccably tailored, and his signature red tie caught the morning light. Despite the early hour, his energy was immediately apparent to everyone present. He paused for just a moment, taking in the magnificent sight of Windsor Castle rising before him like something from a fairy tale. William stepped forward first, as protocol demanded. The heir to the throne extended his hand with the easy grace that came from years of such meetings, though none quite like this one. Trump's handshake was firm and enthusiastic, accompanied by the broad smile that had charmed supporters and critics alike throughout his career. The two men's greeting was warm but measured, each understanding the significance of this first impression. William's natural diplomatic skills were evident as he welcomed the American president with genuine courtesy while maintaining the dignity expected of his position. Trump responded with surprising formality, clearly appreciating the historic nature of the moment. Catherine stepped forward as William made the introductions. Her smile was radiant and genuine as she offered her hand to the president. Trump's demeanor softened noticeably as he greeted the princess, his natural charm emerging as he complimented her appearance and expressed his pleasure at finally meeting someone he had heard so much about. The exchange lasted only minutes, but photographers captured every gesture and expression. The images would travel around the world within hours, analyzed and discussed by commentators and citizens alike. The careful choreography of the greeting had achieved its purpose, showing respect, friendship, and the continuation of the special relationship. As the initial formalities concluded, the group moved toward the castle entrance. Trump paused several times to take in the architecture, his businessman's eye clearly appreciating the craftsmanship and history surrounding him. He made several comments about the castle's beauty and asked intelligent questions about its construction and significance. The household cavalry stood at attention as the group passed, their ceremonial uniforms and perfectly groomed horses creating a scene of spectacular pageantry. Trump stopped to admire the horses and speak briefly with one of the guards, showing the common touch that had served him well throughout his career. The guard, maintaining perfect military bearing, answered questions about his unit and its traditions. Inside the castle, the state apartments had been prepared to showcase the very best of British royal hospitality. The rooms gleamed with centuries of accumulated treasures, from priceless paintings to historic furniture that had witnessed countless diplomatic encounters. Every surface reflected the morning light streaming through tall windows, creating an atmosphere of warmth despite the formal setting. Catherine took charge of the tour, her knowledge of the castle's history evident as she shared stories about previous royal residents and notable events. Her natural teaching ability, honed during her work with children's charities, made the historical details accessible and engaging. Trump listened with obvious interest, asking follow-up questions that demonstrated his quick grasp of the information. In the green drawing room, they paused before portraits of previous monarchs. William shared an amusing anecdote about one of his ancestors, showing the human side of royal history that visitors rarely heard. The informal moment broke some of the initial tension, and genuine laughter filled the ancient room. Trump reciprocated with a story about American presidential history, creating an unexpected moment of cultural exchange. The tour continued through rooms that had hosted everyone from Napoleon's marshals to modern heads of state. Each space had its own character and stories, carefully preserved and maintained by the royal collection. Catherine's enthusiasm for the history was infectious, and even the most jaded members of the press pool found themselves caught up in her narrative. In the throne room, Trump took a moment to study the magnificent chairs where monarchs had been crowned and investitures had taken place. The weight of history was almost tangible in the silence that fell over the group. William spoke quietly about the responsibilities that came with such traditions, his words carrying the thoughtfulness of someone who understood their true meaning. The conversation gradually became more personal as the group moved through the castle. Catherine asked about Trump's family, showing particular interest in his grandchildren. Her own experience as a mother gave her questions authenticity, and Trump's face lit up as he spoke about the young people in his life. The shared experience of balancing public responsibilities with family life created an unexpected connection. William found himself impressed by Trump's genuine curiosity about British traditions and institutions. Despite his reputation for controversial statements, the president showed respect for the history surrounding them and asked thoughtful questions about the monarchy's role in modern Britain. The conversation revealed depths that were often hidden beneath the political headlines. As they approached the Oak Room where the private meeting would take place, the atmosphere had evolved from formal courtesy to something approaching genuine friendship. The careful work of diplomats and protocol officers had succeeded in creating conditions where real communication could occur. Both sides had invested considerable effort in making this encounter successful. The Oak Room itself was perfect for intimate discussion, with its warm wood paneling and comfortable seating arrangements. The room had been chosen specifically for its ability to encourage open conversation while maintaining appropriate dignity. Fresh flowers and perfectly arranged refreshments completed the welcoming atmosphere. Before entering the private meeting, Trump turned to express his appreciation for the welcome he had received. His words were clearly heartfelt, acknowledging both the honor of being received at Windsor and the grace with which Catherine and William had conducted the morning's activities. The moment captured the best of diplomatic courtesy. Catherine excused herself as the men prepared for their private discussion, but not before Trump requested that she join them later. Her presence had clearly made a positive impression, and he valued her insights into British culture and society. William agreed readily, understanding that Catherine's participation would enrich their discussions. As the doors closed behind them, the two men settled into comfortable chairs beside tall windows overlooking the castle gardens. The formal pageantry of the morning had given way to the real work of diplomacy. Outside, the world waited to learn what would emerge from this unlikely but important meeting between two very different leaders. The stage was now set for conversations that would range from trade agreements to shared security concerns, from cultural exchanges to global challenges that required cooperative solutions. The personal connections formed during the morning's activities would provide the foundation for whatever agreements might follow. In the comfortable intimacy of the oak room, with sunlight streaming through ancient windows and the weight of history surrounding them, two men who represented very different approaches to leadership prepared to find common ground in service of their nations and the broader relationship that bound them together across the Atlantic Ocean. The private meeting in the oak room extended well beyond its scheduled time, a sign that genuine dialogue was taking place. Through the tall windows, the autumn sun climbed higher over the castle grounds, casting shifting patterns of light across the historic room where two leaders discovered they had more in common than either had expected. When the doors finally opened, both William and Trump emerged with expressions of satisfaction. The prince's diplomatic training had served him well, allowing him to navigate complex topics while building personal rapport. Trump's natural storytelling ability had found an appreciative audience in someone who understood the weight of public responsibility and family legacy. Catherine rejoined them as they prepared to continue the day's program. She immediately sensed the positive atmosphere that had developed during their private conversation. Her intuitive reading of people, refined through years of royal engagements, told her that something meaningful had occurred behind those closed doors. The stiffness of early morning protocol had given way to genuine mutual respect. The group moved toward the Waterloo Chamber for lunch, passing through corridors lined with portraits of historical figures who had shaped the relationship between Britain and America. Trump paused before a painting of Winston Churchill, commenting on the wartime leader's relationship with American presidents during the Second World War. His knowledge of history impressed William, who had grown up surrounded by these same images but rarely heard them discussed with such personal insight. The Waterloo Chamber itself was breathtaking in its grandeur, with its soaring ceiling and massive table that could accommodate dozens of guests. Today, however, the seating was intimate, designed to encourage conversation rather than formal speeches. The meal had been carefully planned to reflect both British tradition and American preferences, with each course representing the best of both culinary cultures. Catherine took her place as hostess with natural grace, ensuring that conversation flowed smoothly while attending to every detail of her guests' comfort. Her questions about American culture and politics were intelligent and well-informed, clearly the result of serious preparation. Trump found himself explaining complex policy positions to someone who asked perceptive follow-up questions and offered thoughtful observations. The conversation during lunch ranged widely, from economic cooperation to cultural exchanges, from shared security challenges to the personal experiences of life in the public eye. William spoke about the modernization of the monarchy and its relevance to contemporary British society. Trump shared insights about American business culture and the challenges of political leadership in an era of rapid change. One particularly engaging discussion centered on the role of social media in modern communication. Catherine asked about the challenges of maintaining authentic personal expression while meeting the demands of public responsibility. Trump's candid observations about the power and pitfalls of direct communication resonated with both royals, who faced similar dilemmas in their own public roles. As the meal progressed, personal stories began to emerge. Trump spoke affectionately about his grandchildren and their fascination with castles and princesses. Catherine shared anecdotes about her own children's reactions to living in such extraordinary circumstances. The human elements of their conversation created connections that transcended political and cultural differences. William found himself genuinely enjoying Trump's company in ways he had not anticipated. The president's enthusiasm was infectious, his questions were intelligent, and his respect for British institutions was clearly sincere. Behind the controversial public persona, William discovered someone who was genuinely curious about the world and eager to understand different perspectives. The afternoon program included a visit to St. George's Chapel, where recent royal weddings had captured global attention. As they walked through the chapel's historic interior, Trump expressed his admiration for the institution of marriage and the importance of family stability. His comments revealed a more traditional side that contrasted with his public reputation for controversy. Catherine shared the story of her own wedding to William, describing the experience of walking down the aisle knowing that millions of people around the world were watching. Trump listened with obvious interest, asking about how they had maintained their privacy and normalcy despite such intense public scrutiny. The conversation revealed shared challenges that transcended their very different backgrounds. In the chapel's quiet atmosphere, surrounded by centuries of royal history, the conversation turned to more philosophical topics. William spoke about the sense of duty and service that had shaped his life from childhood. Trump responded with his own reflections on responsibility and the weight of making decisions that affected millions of people. Despite their different paths to leadership, both men understood the isolation and pressure that came with their positions. The visit to the chapel concluded with a moment of silent reflection, each person lost in their own thoughts about duty, service, and the legacy they hoped to leave. The ancient stones seemed to absorb their contemplations, adding another layer to the countless prayers and meditations that had taken place within those walls over the centuries. As the afternoon drew to a close, the group returned to the state apartments for final conversations and the inevitable photographs that would document this historic encounter. The informal atmosphere that had developed during the day was evident in everyone's relaxed demeanor and genuine smiles. What had begun as a formal diplomatic obligation had evolved into something approaching genuine friendship. Trump took time to thank the castle staff who had made the day possible, from the security personnel who had ensured everyone's safety to the household staff who had prepared the magnificent meals. His appreciation was clearly heartfelt, and the staff responded with obvious pleasure at his recognition of their efforts. Catherine and William exchanged approving glances at this display of gracious behavior. The final photographs were taken in the green drawing room, with its perfect lighting and elegant furnishings providing an ideal backdrop. The images would be studied and analyzed by millions of people, but those present knew they captured something genuine, the successful meeting of different worlds and the creation of personal bonds that would influence future relations. As preparations began for Trump's departure, the conversation turned to future opportunities for cooperation and exchange. Plans were discussed for cultural events, educational partnerships, and ongoing diplomatic dialogue. The personal connections formed during the day would provide a foundation for more formal agreements and initiatives. Catherine presented Trump with a carefully chosen gift, a first edition book about Windsor Castle's history, personally inscribed by both her and William. Trump was clearly moved by the gesture, promising that the book would occupy a place of honor in his private library. His reciprocal gift, a piece of American craftsmanship representing the best of his nation's artisan traditions, was received with equal appreciation. The final moments before departure were filled with genuine warmth and expressions of mutual respect. Plans were made for future meetings, both formal and informal. Invitations were extended in both directions, creating the possibility of ongoing friendship beyond the requirements of official diplomacy. As Trump's motorcade prepared to depart, he took one last look at Windsor Castle, its ancient towers now bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. The day had exceeded all expectations, creating memories and relationships that would endure long after the headlines faded. What had begun as a formal state visit had become something much more valuable, a genuine human connection between leaders who discovered they had more in common than their differences suggested. Catherine and William stood together on the castle steps, waving farewell as the motorcade disappeared through the gates. The day had been a remarkable success, demonstrating the enduring power of personal diplomacy and the importance of looking beyond surface differences to find common ground. As the sound of the helicopters faded into the distance, they knew they had witnessed something special, the continuation of a friendship between nations that had weathered many storms and would undoubtedly face many more challenges together. The ancient walls of Windsor Castle settled back into their timeless quiet, having added another chapter to their remarkable history. The successful encounter would be remembered as a moment when personal grace and diplomatic skill combined to strengthen the bonds between two great nations, proving once again that the most important diplomacy happens not in formal meetings but in the genuine human connections that transcend political boundaries and cultural differences.